Welcome to Restoring Hope, the podcast of the Missionaries of the Precious Blood, where we explore the spirituality, charism, and lived witnesses of those who find life, healing, and renewal in the precious blood of Jesus. I'm your host, Patrick Higgins. Today, we're honored to welcome Sister Barbara Jean Franklin of the Adorers of Christ, whose life and ministry reflect a deep commitment to the community, service, and what Sister Maria D. Matias lovingly called our dear neighbor. As commissary for the Sisters of the Most Precious Blood, As commissary for the Sisters of the Most Precious Blood, Sister Barbara Jean serves her community in a unique and often unforeseen way, ensuring that the practical needs of religious life are met so that the mission can flourish. In this conversation, we'll explore her vocation, her role, the spirituality of our dear neighbor, and where she finds hope in today's world. Sister Barbara Jean, welcome to Restoring Hope.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. So I guess let me just start off with a basic question. Can you tell us about your journey to religious life? What first stirred your heart toward the Adorers of Christ?
Well, I'm going to share some of that as I dig into this, but I was taught by the sisters, and so that's kind of a natural. But I always wanted to be a Franciscan because I love St. Francis. We didn't have any Franciscans near us. So I joined the Precious Blood, and it really was the right call. The dear neighbor really became very important in my life.
Well, and I would love to explore that theme in just a minute, because so that our listeners are familiar with it. So were there people or moments that shaped your vocation?
Yes. There were times when, but first of all, you have to know, I prayed that I would never be called to religious life.
Really? Okay, why is that?
Yeah, well, because, we'd go to Mass every day, and at the end of Mass, we did this whole string of prayers. This was back in the 50s, so,
Okay.
And so we'd pray all these prayers, and, I actually did spontaneous prayer before we talked about spontaneous prayer, because after we prayed the prayer for vocations to the priesthood and religious life, I would say, yes, God, but don't look this direction. And I think I really fought that. I went to the high school that the sisters sponsored 6 miles from my home, and I got in trouble a lot, but it's not hard to get in trouble when you go to an all-girls high school, and half of the girls are aspirants wanting to become sisters. So
Okay.
I was a day student, and you didn't have to do too much to be in trouble with the sisters. And so I stirred a lot of things up, and the principal and I knew each other well. And it just so happened one day I'm a sophomore in high school, and I'm in the principal's office again, and she says, "Barb, what are you going to do with your life?" I was 16.
Who knows?
And
Right.
so my smart mouth responded, "Oh, I think I'm going to be a nun."
Okay.
And it just so happened at that moment, the vocation director was walking past the principal's office. And Sister Mary Andrews said, "Sister Mary George, come in here. Barb said she wants to be a nun." And I really think those sisters knew I was called before I knew I was called. They must have seen something in me.
Okay, so that's where it started. And you were kind of being probably a bit flippant about it, but it turns out that was actually your calling. Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right.
And I think it just points to sometimes other people see stuff we don't see.
Right. Right. That's a great point. Yeah.
And so, later I joined, I became an adorer, I was teaching, and I think my sisters saw stuff in me that was more than that. And so I served in leadership for a long time. So I had the opportunity to serve my own community for, I think, a total of 15 years as treasurer and as provincial.
So let's explore, what does being an adorer of Christ mean to you personally?
Okay, when you are an adorer of the blood of Christ, you are both contemplative and active.
Okay.
An adorer is someone who really sits, as Maria de Matias did, at the cross. But out of that sitting comes a commitment, and it's a call to action. And so sometimes even when you get in the midst of the action, you have to kick back into being contemplative. What does all this mean? So for me, for the adorers, it's a connect between doing and being.
Okay, well, so for our readers who may not be familiar with her, Saint Maria de Matias is your founder, correct? And can you explain kind of what her overlying philosophy was, or her spirituality and charism?
Well, I think she really saw a call for compassion, and she saw a call for reconciliation. You must know that she was very much inspired by someone I think you know called Gaspar del Bufalo.
Yes.
And John Merlini was her spiritual director. So she I think, like my own story, she was looking for something. And then suddenly here's Gaspar preach, and that's what helped her focus in. And she saw needs around her, especially for the women and girls. And so she starts teaching the women, the girls. Women joined her. And so in 1834, in Acuto, Italy, the Adorers of the Blood of Christ were born.
And Saint Maria de Matias often spoke of our dear neighbor. What does she mean by that phrase?
It means anyone who is in front of us, or at least crosses our hearts. That's the neighbor. So we're really neighbor to everyone. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but that everyone has to include people who we normally call the other.
And how does that concept shape the way that the sisters approach ministry today?
I think it opens us up and challenges us to really look at who is the neighbor we are called to serve now, today. So since you speak in a contemporary sense, we're in a culture that's increasingly divided and polarized. So how does our dear neighbor challenge us? Well, I think the whole sense of being reconcilers is the big challenge for all of us as precious blood women and men. I think it's making neighbor with people with whom we need to reconcile.
Can you share a story where you experienced someone truly caring for their neighbor?
I've seen people who I know they really don't feel like being nice to someone, because some people it's hard to be nice to. I see it among sisters in my own community. I see it in the communities with whom I work. I see people reaching out, sometimes at great inconvenience to themselves, to attend to focus on that person. It's really wonderful when I see it in people who are so focused on the other person. When they're talking to you, they're talking to you. They're listening to you. They're engaging with you, no matter what's going on around them.
So is there a way that lay people can incorporate the spirit of our dear neighbor into everyday life?
Yes, first of all, I would hope they see us doing it. I hope we're good examples. Sometimes we're not such good examples. I'll own it for myself, and I think I've observed it among a few sisters and missionaries, all of us, we precious blood folks. You know, the bar is set pretty high for us. But I think they see us, and we can be an inspiration to them. You know, you don't get up in the morning and say, who can I inspire? And it's going to be our actions often more than our words that inspire.
Well, in terms of the spirituality of the precious blood, is do you remember your first encounter with that spirituality, or even a more recent encounter?
I think that there have been times when I felt called to be really stretched. Sometimes, and I kind of joke about that, but I say it to my own sisters as adorers, and I say it to the sisters of the most precious blood with whom I minister. I say, isn't it darn hard to have to be reconcilers?
Yes.
When you're sitting in a meeting and you're dealing with someone who has just mucked it up and you're mopping up, it's really hard to want to be reconciled with that person. Or it's not hard to watch the news. I mean, it's not hard to find needs for reconciliation when you watch the news. So you hear someone say something and you say, excuse me, but liar, liar, pants on.
Yeah. So, sister, can you explain just in a general sense, and even in a specific sense, what you mean when you say reconciled? For our listeners who may not be familiar with the concept of reconciliation, what do you mean by being reconciled?
I think I mean pulling things together, respecting each other, even in our differences. For example, when this was in the 80s, when we sisters at Ruma, which was one of our community houses and our mother house at one time, when we declared sanctuary. Now, as a community, we had to come to that. And it was a real stretch because we were willing to welcome people who the government would not consider legal. And so we declared sanctuary. And the day that the first people came, Gladys and I don't remember the names of the others, but Gladys was one. Gladys, I believe, was pregnant from somewhere in South America. I think Guatemala, perhaps. But anyway, when Gladys and the others came, Sister Kathleen McGuire, who was our communications director, said she'd better call all the sisters wherever we were to let them know we had our first people, first undocumented, first people who needed shelter. And so at that time I'm principal of a school. And I get the call and I'm standing there on the phone talking with Kathleen. And the school was in tough times. We had a lot of factions. The main factions were people who wanted change in the school and the people who wanted status quo. We had a lot of chaos in the school. We had a lot of people mad at each other. We had people who would not talk to each other. And I was sent to the school as a change agent. So I had friends and I had foes. So while this is going on, I'm standing there thinking, we just declared sanctuary. And if sanctuary is going to have any integrity in my life, and, it was going to be public, we were sanctuary, so people would know, then I had to be sanctuary. I had to be safe place. And the doorway I was standing in the school hall, had to be open to all those parents, whether they were friends or what I considered at that time foes. So I had to learn how to dialogue, how to listen, how to bring people together, how to just listen and talk with people. So I thought that what we were doing publicly, I had to do in that small office in Southern Illinois.
And you say that the people that you at the time considered foes, I assume you no longer consider them like that. You're more open to a dialogue. Is that correct?
Right, right. And by the end of the year, we were doing rather well.
Great. Okay.
Now there weren't, obviously there were challenges, but people I think learned along with me that we're much better when we talk to each other, and that it's okay to have different opinions, and sometimes it's the differences that can bring about something better.
And when you say that you declared sanctuary, I think I know what you mean by that, but just so for the clarity of our listeners, what does it mean when an institution declares sanctuary?
We become home for people who are undocumented, people who are trying to escape their own kind of persecution in their countries. And so we had people from Central and South America. We more recently had a man who was about to be deported come to us at Ruma, Illinois, Alex. And the church in St. Louis that was going to welcome him was creating an apartment for him in their basement, and it wasn't ready yet, so they needed a place to put him. So they asked if Alex could stay with us. So Alex was with us for several months, and how good it was for us. But I remember the day that Alex arrived. He was from southern Missouri, did construction, and the men that he worked with all stood with him in terms of he's a good man, he's a hard worker, we really like Alex. At the same time, we didn't want any of them here. It's really interesting when you know the person personally, it's different. But, Alex was about to be deported, and the law is the law. So it's interesting how people voted in that small town, but also their care for Alex. It was kind of an interesting thing. But I remember the morning that Alex came, he and his family, his wife, his father-in-law, and his children. He had 3 children. One of them on the dyslexia spectrum and really depended upon his father to keep himself balanced. And that was hard because Alex was going to be separated from his family. So the family goes back to their home, and Alex stays with us. But I remember walking out to the parking lot, and the strange thing happened. Alex and I just embraced each other. And it was such a touching moment. And then later on, Pope Francis was saying something about we must embrace the stranger. And I thought, wow, I got to do that.
You did, yes.
So Alex was with us. He worked with our maintenance men. He was a hard worker. We really liked having him around. And the day he left, when they came to get him to take him to the church that was ready for him in St. Louis, our maintenance staff was there. One of the men was so touched, he had to walk away crying as these guys are embracing Alex and saying goodbye. So what happened among that staff was different too, because typically we're a pretty one-color society. So to have Alex, and then on the weekend, Alex's family would come and stay with us. So.
And how is Alex doing today?
Alex is now free. He finally got all the documentation. He had come into the country illegally, looking for work to support his family. Then eventually had a family here. So anyway. It was a great success story.
And you brought up a little earlier, you said the law is the law. So how do you react to people who have compassion for illegal immigrants or immigration, but they also say, but the law is the law. We have to obey the law. We have to work within the within the parameters of law. How do you reconcile those different trains of thought?
Very carefully. I think we have to respect that people want to be law-abiding, and don't we all actually want to be law-abiding? But I think that the fact that we learn or we meet people who we did not know before, and once we get deep down and get to know the people, it makes such a difference. And so I think, the law is the law, but sometimes there's a law, I guess called the law of love, that takes us beyond that. And I think this story is an example of how we as precious blood people are called to reconcile. Maybe we're called to reconcile the law of the land and the law of God in people's lives.
That's very well stated. Very well stated. Sister, let me change gears for just a second to get to a little bit more of your background. You are the commissary for the doors. What exactly does that mean, and how does that work? What does the work entail in that?
Okay, a commissary is appointed by the dicastery for consecrated life and societies of apostolics. This dicastery is an office at the Vatican that ultimately approves the leadership of congregations.
Okay.
So what happens to congregations is, as they reach a certain amount of diminishment, they look and say, so what is our future? And the ones that I work with two congregations. Actually, I'm commissary for a Franciscan group as well. Finally,
okay.
Franciscans.
Okay.
But these two congregations, which are very different, one of them established a healthcare system. They've been nurses, physician's assistants. They're in the healthcare world mostly. And a community that's been educators, has had academies, has had colleges. So these Franciscan Sisters of Mary, the nursing group, got together with the education group. Now, this happened 20 years ago. They just started talking and saying, we don't think that it is good for us to accept new vocations, because our last sister pronounced her vows 20 years ago, 30 years ago. What are you bringing the person to? So they thought, okay, we're willing to name it. Our congregation is in what we call fulfillment or completion. But how do we assure life for our sisters going forward? How do we make sure that those last sisters are taken care of? But how do we also assure that they will have some sort of leadership? Because what happens is, as the community gets smaller, the pool for people to serve in leadership gets smaller. So communities will say, we need a leader, we need a canonical leader, but we don't have a leader among us, or a leadership team. Sometimes there are one or two, but not a team of people who can be the leaders. So they decide that they will ask the Vatican for a commissary. And the commissary typically would be someone who's already served in leadership in her own congregation. So you replace what was the general superior, superior general, however it is called, the canonically elected person, and her elected council. So the sisters in the two congregations I work with no longer have elected leadership. So I became a commissary for the Franciscan Sisters of Mary in July of 2024. And then on July 1st, that big date, I became the commissary for the Sisters of the Most Precious Blood in 2025. So that's how that unfolds. Today, there are many congregations that need to look at that. But the important thing is that we assure spiritual care and community life for the sisters. That's the mandate in the letter from the Vatican.
Okay.
And so I work with 25 lay women and men. And, they take care of the health care needs. Leah, earlier, the communication needs still exist, as well as a finance department. And then, of course, we have 2 women, one for each congregation, that is a spiritual care community life person. So she's the boots on the ground with the sisters.
Okay. All right. That paints a picture. Thank you. Sister, so the title of our podcast obviously is Restoring Hope. Where do you find hope in today's church and in today's world?
I find it in people like you and me, and even some people who aren't like you and me.
Okay.
Whom we might not consider allies even. I find it when we start dialoguing with each other, and I think this is a great gift of our precious blood spirituality. Because as precious blood women and men, we're willing to stand in the breach. We're willing to talk to all the people. We're open to all the people. Well, at least we try. It's not always easy. I remember one time we had, in 1993, the Mississippi River worked havoc on parts of Missouri and Illinois. I was in Illinois at the time, and my hometown was under siege by the mighty Mississippi. There were levees on 2 sides of the town to protect the town, but they needed to be shored up. So there was sandbagging going on. And I was on a sandbag line. And when they passed the sandbags, and the sandbags, I guess, are about 30 pounds. You fill them with sand, and I was on that brigade at one time, too. But anyway, I'm on this brigade, and the guy to the left of me, whom I did not know, was wearing an NRA hat. Now, there's nothing wrong with the National Rifle Association. But my family never had guns, never wanted guns. I think was afraid of guns. And so NRA would be the other. So I'm next to this guy wearing proudly, I think, his NRA cap. But when those sandbags came down, once in a while there'd be one that was heavier. They would make the announcement as it's coming down, heavy, and you knew that you were going to get an extra heavy one. But I observed that this man with the NRA cap never completely let go of that sandbag until the person on my right was also grabbing the bag.
Okay.
I never held that bag by myself. I was helped by a man who wore an NRA cap. The other and I became people who were working together for something else, for something better. So those things happen.
Which goes to show that we all have, obviously, a shared humanity. Sister, how does Eucharistic adoration nourish your own hope?
I think Eucharistic adoration gives me a chance to step back and to really step into where is God in all of this? Maria de Matias used to spend her evenings often at the foot of the cross. And I used to not like those holy pictures of her at the cross.
Why?
Because I thought, oh, for Pete's sake, Maria, look at something brighter. Go watch the sunset.
Okay.
Until I realized that it was at the foot of the cross that she drew her strength. And the more I reflect on that, it's like, as reconcilers, we spend our lives on the way to Calvary and in the garden the morning of the resurrection. And we're called to kind of balance those two, what seem to be opposites. So it's interesting when we celebrate the liturgy, we do a sign of peace before we approach the table. Now, the sign of peace might not be with someone with whom I'm not at peace,
Right.
but they're representative of that in a sense. So, to let go of all kinds of things, true or not true, about the other person, and really just embrace the fact that God loves this person as much as God loves me. So I think it's being able to step back and contemplate that reality, uncomfortable as it is.
Sister, are there scriptural passages that anchor you during difficult times?
Well, it kind of depends upon the day.
Okay.
I don't recall anything. I'm taken with some of the stories. The Syro-Phoenician woman who, she's asking for her daughter to be healed, and Jesus is saying, "You're not my kind." And it almost sounds insulting, and I really have trouble with that. But in the end, Jesus opens up to her, and her daughter is healed. So Jesus was able to work out of his own pain at times, or he was able, I think Jesus kind of changed his mind there. And we think he knew everything right away. I think it gives me confidence that I can grow into something better too.
Sister, what would you say to someone who feels discouraged, forgotten, or spiritually weary?
First of all, I think I would not say, but listen. What is it that's eating your heart? What's holding you down? And it's really easy. You don't have to go far to find people who are discouraged by what goes on in today's world. But then, as you listen and you find out what's going on, sometimes you can pull out of things that you know or you've experienced. And sometimes out of the mess, good things happen. As you probably know, Patrick, in 1992, we had 5 sisters martyred in Liberia, West Africa. And I remember as we were dealing with that, many places were having memorial masses, etc. And they had one at the cathedral in Belleville where we were located. And we were introduced to a song by Rory Cooney. It's an old song, but I still love it. Do not fear to hope. Though rage and rise, our God sees not as we see. Success is not the prize. And every once in a while, I think back to the first time we heard that at that memorial mass, and we sing it now. And it's every bit as meaningful as it was then. Because out of that great tragedy things happened among us. I think as sisters, we became much more aware of each other. We shared a great loss, but we were there to help each other through that loss and to see the sunshine on the other side. And so somehow I think that helped us be more attentive to others who are suffering in whatever way. Certainly, we became greater friends with the people of Liberia, and much more sensitive to places of the world where there's great conflict. So it kind of, while it was a great tragedy, it opened up new things among us and beyond us.
Words of wisdom. Thank you, Sister Barbara Jean. We very much appreciate that.
Well, let's think about this, because I know we have a number of lay women and men who want to be engaged in things, and lately, I am so much more appreciative of how people can live, whether it's the companions or the associates or the partners in mission, whatever it is with our different precious blood congregations. These lay women and men who do this day after day, who bring reconciliation day after day, inspire me. And lately I've seen a couple of things from Catherine DeHook Doherty, who started Madonna House, a lay apostolate that strives to bring unity. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. I want to share one thing that she said. She said, "The hunger for God can only be satisfied by a love that is face to face, person to person. It is only in the eyes of another that we can find the icon of Christ." And I think that's, when I felt called when I was 16, even though I had not yet ruined my life, I think that I was looking for that icon. And that's what drew me to the community and still draws me, And I was a novice when Vatican II happened, and we got that great thing from the pastoral constitution, the joys and hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the men and women of this age. These are indeed our joys and hopes, griefs and anxieties. And we all, whether we're vowed, consecrated, lay, whatever we are, that's what we're called to as precious blood people. I really believe this is our time. And we better do it. This is a time when we are called to bring our charism in a very special way to this world.
Sister Barbara Jean, thank you very much for sharing your inspiration, your vocation, and your witness with us today. I believe that your reflection on our dear neighbor reminds us that hope is often restored not really through grand gestures, but through faithful, loving attention to the person right in front of us. To our listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of Restoring Hope. If today's conversation encouraged you, please share this episode and continue to pray for the missionaries of the precious blood and the adorers of Christ as they live and proclaim the reconciling love of Jesus. Learn more about the adorers of Christ at adorers.org and check out Missionaries of the Precious Blood at preciousbloodus.org and on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Until next time, may the precious blood of Jesus be your hope, your strength, and your peace. Thank you for joining us.